Boom. So hi, everyone. Welcome to Hope Intervention 4. I'm going to go ahead and get going as people start coming in, and I'll share my screen so that we can go through slides for today. And the plan. There we go. Okay, wonderful. So my name's Dr. Julia Mossbridge. I'm doing this project with Dr. Michael Sapiro from the Institute for Love and Time, or TILT, and you can find out more about it. In the future, we have an evergreen page that lists the next Hope intervention and the link to register at gotilt.org/hope-intervention. So today we're doing session 4, Reconnecting with Your Future Selves. And our schedule today will be about 5 minutes of me talking about the science of connecting with your future self, some of which will be review if you came to the first Hope intervention. 7 minutes of a future self meditation from Dr. Sapiro, 5 minutes of discussion with an ICU doctor to discuss his essential type of medicine. I guess I kind of call it essential medicine. That's Dr. Adam Rizvi. Some Q&A in the chat window for any of the three of us, and a brief summary statement, homework. And also, again, we'll do the thing we did last week, which was I'll ring the chime at 29 minutes to make sure we're all getting ready to close up for the day. So just a review from Hope Intervention 1, multiple studies and meta-analyses show that your connection with your future self can be strengthened with practice, leads to increased future orientation, which is the scientific term most related to hope, and improves well-being. So this picture is an example. It's actually two twins, but I like to use it as a visual aid to think about what it's like to connect with your future self. And I briefly wanted to go over one of the studies that was in one of the meta-analyses today that I felt was particularly compelling. What the scientists did was they took 50 self-described alcohol-dependent people ages 18 to 65, and they split them into two groups of 25. One was called the EFT group, so episodic future thinking group, and the other was called control, so they didn't do episodic future thinking. And what episodic future thinking is trying to describe a scene, imagined scene from the future. So something you imagine that's in the future very carefully. So what are you wearing? What are you smelling? What are you feeling? What's around you? Who's with you? And they had folks do this several times, and in those that were in the episodic future thinking group. And the ones in the control group described very carefully scenes from the past. Same thing. What were you doing? What were you wearing? What were you smelling? What were you feeling? What were you seeing? And there were two pretty impressive results. The one on the left, not everyone did this task. I kind of thought of this task after starting the experiment, but basically the task was to have a bunch of different drink prices and find out the number of drinks that people would purchase at each different price. And the episodic future thinking group are these filled triangles on the bottom curve. So they're purchasing different drinks, a different number of drinks, even at the cheaper price. When the drinks become more expensive, everyone says, we're not going to buy much. On the right-hand side is a monetary task. You can get $50 now or $100 if you can wait for a week to get the full amount. And the triangles are showing people who are more likely to wait for a week, and these are the folks in the episodic future thinking task side of the experiment, the experimental group, versus control. They're less likely to wait for a week or 10 days or 100 days or 1,000 days. So that was pretty impressive, and all they needed to do was just have this imaginative experience of describing their future selves. So what I think is going on, and this goes back to Hope Intervention 2, what I think is going on is everyone has fear of the future, especially when you can see that your life circumstances are going down, like in this graph. You can start, like in the COVID epidemic, we could start to see like life circumstances are just getting worse for a lot of people and probably for ourselves. If we are at the triangle, so we could see that our life circumstances are getting worse, and our future self is over on the other side of that gap, just sort of not connected to us, then the fear, which is totally realistic and real, will potentially dominate. But I think what's going on in folks who actually are imagining their future selves is something like this. If you can bring a representation of that future self into you, while you're in this place where your life circumstances are going down, your well-being doesn't take as much of a hit. So your well-being is that green line on the top. It's barely sinking down. It's kind of flat. And that's because you have hope. You have this representation of the future inside of you. You're connected to your future self. So I'll read this at the end again before the homework, but your future self has been through all of what you're going through right now already. So this future self has extra love to share with you now. And unconditional love is an unlimited resource. So you can actually tap in now without any depletion. So you don't have to worry about depletion. That is something people worry about. So I'm going to quit that screen share and hand it over to Dr. Michael Sapiro, who's meditation researcher and meditation teacher. As soon as I find his unmute button, there. Hi, Michael. Have I successfully unmuted you?
Can you hear me? Okay, lovely. Hello, everyone. Good morning again. Happy to be with all of us. We're going to just jump right into our meditation practice. So if you can find a comfortable seated position with your shoulders back and down, connecting through the seat bones to the chair, or the cushion, or the couch. All right, so now as a group, we're all in this together. Let's take a deep breath in. Inhale. And sigh. And this next sigh, sigh into the body. Inhale. And sigh. So rest your mind in your body as the body rests on the chair or the couch. And drop your attention into the body, feeling the body from the inside out. Dropping your mind into the body like getting into a tub or a warm bed. Feel the radiant sensations of the body. Begin to breathe slowly and deeply. And in your mind, tell yourself slow and steady. Slow and steady. And feel your body's response. So for now, rest your mind on the breath itself. The waves of the breath slowly coming in, settling in the body, releasing out of the body. Rest your mind on the slow and steady breath. And as your mind wanders, as it will tend to do, gently guide its attention back to the body breathing. And for a few moments, open your attention wide beyond the body to sound, color, and light in the room through the eyelids. The feeling of air against the skin. As the body breathes slowly and deeply, you become aware around you, the room, the feeling, sounds. So now bring your attention up into the center of your brain, behind the eyes, to the infinite space of imagination. And in this space of imagination, imagine yourself in the future. It could be 5 minutes or 5 days, years from now. Allow an image of yourself in the future to arise in the mind. What are you wearing? What are you doing? Are you alone or surrounded by people? Where are you? What is your facial expression like? Body posture? Imagine your future self stopping whatever she or he is doing and turning towards you. What message does your future self have for you, if any? Feel your own body's response to this message, to the presence of your future self in your mind. Allow the future self to radiate love towards you, beaming love, filling your body now, here. Allow yourself to feel this radiant love in the body back towards your future self. Perhaps you thank yourself. And feeling this radiant love, or inviting in a sense of love, settle back in your body here, now. Feeling this tender, loving awareness. Just sitting in this tender, loving awareness. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly. And just keep the hearts open as we invite Adam to come join us this morning.
Thank you,
Adam,
Michael.
welcome.
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Michael, that was
Okay.
beautiful. Adam, you know, I was hoping you could introduce yourself a little bit about your background and then just talk briefly for about 5 minutes about when you and I had talked, we did this interview where you said you kind of anchor your patients in time, in a time when they are full of joy. If you could talk about that or whatever else comes up, if something else comes up, that's great. And then we'll do questions and answers.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. That was a wonderful meditation. And I just want to say thank you, Julia, for the invitation to be on this group, a very important group. Um, what I do, so right now I'm an ICU physician. I trained at the University of Minnesota and Stanford for critical care, and I live in Arizona right now. And I've been in the midst of this, of the effects of this pandemic, and helping patients and oftentimes their family members deal with what's happening here. And as many of you can imagine, if some of you may even have family members in the ICU, this is a time where hopelessness can arise. And I think one of the purposes of the invitation is for you all to know that that's not necessarily the case. There are many opportunities for hope in all of this. One thing that I'd like to share that I shared with Julia is how I engage with my patients. And it's a way that each of us can do with each other and even with our loved ones who may be sick. So what I do when I have a patient come in and they're in distress and they're sick, I do my very best to not see the sickness as the end all be all of who they are. I do my best not to define them by their disease. And it's a little bit like that diagram where you're here in that place of fear and you can't see far ahead into the future to know that all will be well. If I were to stay focused on where my patient is right now, which oftentimes when they present is um, either in a setting of a trauma or more recently with a lot of respiratory distress to the point of needing intubation, if I focused on only that, then I couldn't see my way out. That would be all that there is. And so I need to give myself an anchor of who they really are. And what I do, practically speaking, is I see them in their perfection. I may imagine themselves, my patients, far out into the future in a state of peace, in a state of vitality and health and joy and love. I may imagine that sometime in the past as well, if there was a moment in the past. But what I spend most of my attention on is that sense of perfection, that sense of peace and joy that I know is at the essence of who they are. And what that does for me is it's an anchor.
So I think we might have,
Now,
there he is.
what's that, Julia?
We lost you for a second, but you're back.
Okay, good. What I'm not sure how much you lost, but I'll just pick up. That focus that I have of who they really are, my patient in their essence, is my anchor. And I repeatedly remind myself throughout the course of what's being presented to me that the severity of this illness is not really who they are. Who they are in essence is that whole person, is that joyful, peaceful, loving person. And it does something. And Julia, in our last conversation, what I shared was having an anchor almost subconsciously compels movement towards that. And whether it's me as a physician taking the actions that I need on a conscious or subconscious level to bring my patient there, or even if it's being communicated on a deeper level to the patient so that they know on a deep level, yeah, that's who I really am, that peaceful, loving, joyful person. And it gets them through that. And health, I think the last thing I'll share, because I know we're a little limited on time, is important for people to know that health is really a sense of wholeness. The words actually are etymologically related, health and wholeness. And it may not necessarily have anything to do with what happens to the physical body. And there are many times where a one of my patients may leave the body, and that's the end of that particular life. But I know that healing has occurred for them and for their family members. And so I imagine sometimes when I tap into that future, that anchor, it's not necessarily what's happening with the body, but it's who they are at their essence. And if we relate to each other that way, I think it shifts our relationships. It certainly does between me and my patients. And I'll leave it at that. Julia, if you have any questions or anything to add.
Well, also let me unmute Michael so if he has anything to add. But I also want to hear from folks. Michael, I'm working on unmuting you.
Gotcha. I got it.
Okay. Those beautiful, Adam, thank you, that anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And I call this an essential approach to medicine because you're seeing the essence of people and you're anchoring there. And there is a power to that. And you're a rare physician that acknowledges that not all power comes from the physical world. So thank you. I'm going to type a little note in the chat window so people are aware of where the chat window is. Adam, if you could stay on screen and people can type in questions. And just a favor, if you have a question for Dr. Rizvi, you can type in Adam, or Dr. Rizvi. If you have a question for Dr. Sapiro, you can type in Michael or Dr. Sapiro. If you have a question for me, just so we know, since there's 3 folks here you might have questions of. My guess is most people will have a question for Adam because he's the guest. And so that's fine. So please ask away. And if no one has a comment, since nothing's in there and I want to ask this question, I'm going to go ahead and ask. Dr. Rizvi, Adam, when you're seeing the essence of people and you're seeing the essence and you're not concerned with the body, at the same time, you're a doctor and you are concerned with the body. Do you think that seeing the essence and using that as an anchor, that place of joy, whether it's in the future or the past, do you feel like that distracts you from taking care of the body, or do you think that actually helps you? One could argue it would distract you because now you think the most important thing is this other thing, but I suspect that's not true, so I'm curious.
I think he's muted.
Oh.
Which is a very Zen answer now. Oh, okay.
It is a very Zen answer. All right. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, it's interesting. So I think in my training, I've been trained sufficiently enough where if I have a trauma come in front of me, if I have a patient that's very sick, I don't have time to be distracted. I will take action immediately, and it's almost it bypasses the frontal lobe. It bypasses any decision making. I just do what I need to do, and I think that's the purpose of training, is so that things become automatic in that way. So what I've done is juxtapose on top of that automaticity a sense of relating to someone deeper than what I'm being faced with. If I only knew the person as this this body with broken bones and blood pooling around them, or a person sweating profusely and in respiratory distress, there's a certain fatalism to how I would have to relate to them if that was who they were at that moment. So what I do is I sort of just allow what my body is already doing, which is immediately going for the tube or the IV line. I find myself oftentimes just watching myself take action because it's so ingrained in me that I have the spaciousness to add another layer to it, which is seeing that patient for who they really are.
That's awesome. And there's a question in the chat window. It says, wow, Adam, you're on the leading edge. Do you talk with your colleagues about stuff like this? Are some of them changing to a point of view like yours?
Yeah, you had that question for me, Julia.
It wasn't me.
That's true. Yeah, it's a common. in the places that I've shared what I do, I've had that question quite often. This is my personality. I will not bring something to someone unless I feel they're ready. And there are things that I hear or pick up on, small comments people will make, gestures, behaviors that let me know there's a certain level of openness to them. I generally give people the benefit of the doubt, and will often drop a seed by saying something that's maybe a little bit off, outer edge, so to speak. And if they pick up on it, then I know they're kind of there already in terms of their consciousness or their awareness. And then I'll go forward and I'll just dive into it. But I've had a handful of my physician colleagues be open to this, and I've had very deep conversations, or I've gone down the rabbit hole with a select few. So the answer is yes. Not a lot, but it's happening.
Cool. And then someone asks, is there an engagement you have with the patient that helps them also remember their joy and essence? So is this all private to you? Is it, or do you engage with the patient in some way, not necessarily talking about it, but?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's happening all in here. It's in my private world. That, and for good reason, my patients tend to be intubated and sedated or comatose, or, you know, that's just the nature of the ICU. I don't have the luxury of being able to have a conversation with the patient. But as I shared with you, Julia, on one occasion, I have had patients who have been able to have conversations and engage with me. And if I feel like they're open to it, I will share with them how I see them. And I've had really good experiences with a few patients who've been open to hearing that. And it's felt. When people know that you see them that way, they will feel that. And it is a sense of unconditional love that allows them to just settle and not need to worry anymore, when they know at least one person taking care of me loves me unconditionally.
Absolutely, that makes sense. So just I think we have time for like one more minute, one last question. Do you see different health outcomes based on the attitude, perspective of patients and their families, whether they're hopeful or fearful?
Fantastic question. And I will share with you that I have a different definition of health. I think the question might have come from a place of health as the body, but perhaps not. Health, I think we are multidimensional beings. That's how I perceive things. And I think when we consider the dimensionality to our being, health could mean more than just whether the body gets better or not. I have seen some of the most sacred transitions, meaning deaths, than I ever have earlier, prior to starting my career. And I know that happened in a very healthy way for the patient and for their whole family member. It was sweet and beautiful and sacred. And who wouldn't want to have a transition like that? And so when I see that, I say that's health. And it's healthy for our community and for our society when those moments occur. So yes.
Amen to that. Great.
Amen. Yeah.
So as promised, we're coming briefly back to this summary statement. Thanks so much, Adam. Sorry, so quick. Some great questions from people that didn't get asked. So to close up, your future self has been through all this already. This future self has extra love to share with you now. Unlimited, unconditional love exists, and you can tap in right now. For homework, if you'd like to try it, connect 3 times with your future self this week and receive the unconditional love and wisdom that your future self has to offer you. You could take a screenshot of this if you think you'll forget. There's also this video and the other videos online, and you'll receive an email with a link to everything. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thanks, Adam. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
See you next
Adam.
week.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.